Hey all, Bendel here, back with another totally original concept nobody has done before. So of course you've all seen one of these sorts of videos in your recommended. They're endlessly fascinating to me, so why not make my own? I've always been a huge fan of the narrow gauge engines ever since I was little. Season 4 was and still is my favourite season of the show, and this is almost entirely down to the narrow gauge episodes. So I'm sure it's no surprise that they've always been on my mind while I've been 3D modelling. So in this video I'm going to walk you through the creation process of the little old twins Skarloey and Rheneas. Way back when I was a member of a site called Midsodal Modelworks, I decided to myself, hey, I want to make a bunch of Railway Series Skarloey models. And so I decided the only reasonable model to start with was Sahandle. I bet you weren't expecting that. I don't remember why I initially chose Sahandle first, but I did. So I got to work on him and got him to about here. He was turning out good. And so I did the only reasonable thing and never worked on him again. About a year later, the idea came back to me. Hey, I want to make the Skarloey fleet. But again, this time I started with Skarloey first. We'll get to Sahandle some other time. Skarloey was a big leap in quality for my models. I had to put a lot of care into the small details, as this was my first time doing a lot of the individual copper parts and other really small bits. I decided to base my Skarloey on the present day illustrations for very old engines, as I love the Gunvor and Peter Edwards illustrations. This was the very first book Skarloey was shown in his later rebuilt condition, circa the 60s, with a running board and other changes. As such, that's what I went for on the model. It's also why in these early screenshots Skarloey's number is here. It's also because I'm stupid. I also chose to give Skarloey and the other engines rear numbers based on this illustration from Mountain Engines. It didn't take long for his mesh to... I wrote it didn't take long for his mesh to finally... What, me? Ugh. It didn't take long for his mesh to finally be done. Originally, I was going to leave Skarloey and his pals with 2D faces. Have you ever made 3D faces? That's right, you haven't because you're still alive. For liveries, I went for two alternative liveries. Red wheels, as we see in C. Reginald Dalby's illustrations of 4 little engines, and of course, the TV series colours. I was feeling very proud of him, so I posted him in the RWS server for feedback. About 10 minutes later, I get a surprise DM from Jake Kelsthorpe of TSI, who dropped the bombshell on me that he had unhelpful Gitz faces for Skarloey and Rheneas for me. Oh my god! That was insane. Around this time too, I think, Brighton Terrier shared me a bunch of references they had of all the Skarloey engines. Oh my god! And that right there was the moment I knew that these models were going to be something special. So I got to work on preparing the model for 3D faces. I got a test version of the model in game with, holy f***, why are his cunt plugs like that?
What were they thinking?
I soon swapped it for this one, which was intended for 3-foot models, so it was still a bit too big, but it was better? I soon got Git's faces in game, and oh my god, the coupling changed again.
What the f*** were they thinking?
I'd actually originally put the eyes far too low down, which took me a decent while to realise. I soon retextured the faces too, by putting a plane underneath them and texturing in Substance Painter, which defines the features better and... Oh yeah, Rheneas. Pictured here with his face the size of a pound coin. Rheneas was a much simpler process than Skarloey, as I could actually reuse some of Skarloey's components, as of course both with Fletcher Jennings engines. This means that there really isn't as much to talk about with Rheneas. I think the only real complication was it was harder to find references of Rheneas in the condition I wanted to model him in. I put him in all the same conditions as Skarloey and also gave you the ability to choose between having the name on one side of a boiler and the name on 2 sides of a boiler. This was done because Dolgok for a while only had a name on one side of a boiler, as the Talaflin only accepts passengers from one side of a train. Originally, these models were way too inconsistent for my liking. Skarloey had black cylinders, Rheneas had grey and Veer ones, for example. So all of these inconsistencies were cleared up. Around this time, I also moved Skarloey's number to where it usually is. Sure, it was there in very old engines, but all of the other engines had it round front, so to make it consistent, I moved it. And there we go, all done and finalised. Not! When making Sahandle and Peter Sam, I decided to give both of their meshes a look over, as they'd be re-exported with PBR textures soon anyway. This'll just be a quick look over of models, it won't take me too long. It ended up taking me as long as Sahandle and Peter Sam. Among other things, their rivets were very weirdly spaced, Skarloey's running board was so thin it could function as a razor blade, I hadn't done a very good job with the edge splitting, and for some godforsaken reason, I had added the rims of the smokebox door around the faces.
What were they thinking?
Ugh, it had to go, so call me Gibbons Brothers Limited because I'm rebuilding them. This rebuild of the models basically made them entirely new. It's not as easy to tell, but basically every minor detail was fixed up and updated, very few parts remaining unchanged. But I wasn't out of the woods just yet. It was time to learn PBR texturing. I had had a very rough experience trying PBR in the past. Exporting it just never went right, so me and milk.html sat down and we pushed through it. It went wrong again. Turns out I was an idiot, revelation, I know. And I'd forgotten you had to reduce the amount of UVs to just one, because this is a thing in Blender for some reason. I don't know what makes multiple UV layers, I just know every time I check I have like 7 or 8, it's really annoying. After this, since I can only PBR export in Blender 3.6, which I don't know how to rig in, I had Jupiter's models rig the PBR versions for me. After all that was done, they went off to Trainsboy in Sheffield, who'd scripted them for Trains 19. This part of modelling is what I like to call the hell on earth variety hour, because now I had to retexture every single variant with the updated mesh for both 10 and 19. Again, and again, and again, and oh my god, this took like 900 years. If I did it any more than I did, I'd be in a fucking mental asylum. But finally, after all that work, both were done. Until JRacer11 pointed out that Skarloey's coal is only on one side. About a day before release. Thanks, Jay! So after that, they were all finally done. Oh fuck, Smudger. I got my friend Penny, creator of the famous rap Doing Your Mum, to do the faces for me. Once I got the faces, I put them on Rheneas. I know since he would be a mid-soda engine, he shouldn't have buffers, but he looks weird without them, so... Shut up. Shut up! But I also chose to make Smudger a lot more weathered than I usually do, because I felt it suited him. So, once I finished Smudger, my place in hell next to Satan himself was finally secured, and my revenge towards JRacer11 for taking so long to tell me about the coal was finally complete. So there you go. There's how I made Skarloey, Rheneas, and Smudger. I found making this Skarloey stuff really fun, actually. It's a really satisfying creation process. I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who helps out with these models. I appreciate your help so much. And I also want to give a big shout out to anybody who's filmed or done screenshots with these models. Of course, since this is the end of the video, this is the obligatory part where I tell you to like and subscribe. Also join my Patreon. Here's a big list of all of my Patrons. Big shout out to everybody on this list, you're so cool. Of course, you can download these models on the big station. I'm leaving a description to that in the description. Thank you for watching, and I've been the Nostalgia Critic, and I remember it so you don't have to.